Hello and welcome back to Sonic Generations PC. We are still getting through all of those side missions and red rings, and we are now in Seaside Hill Modern, one of my favorite levels in the entire game. Just like the classic level, it kind of didn't stick with me at first, but when I went back after completing the rest of the game, I found that it's actually one of the best levels in the game. So many different ways to play it, and looks really nice in HD, and it's overall just a joy to have in the game. You know, I know that Sonic Heroes is sort of a game that has very mixed reviews, to say the least, but I always liked Sonic Heroes. However, I've only actually beaten it all the way through once. My experiences with the game after beating it that one time, I kind of have to just play one team and then put it down and maybe play a little bit more later, because you gotta play the game 4 times essentially to get the final ending, to get the final boss and all that stuff, and you also have to collect Chaos Emeralds through special stages, which was actually a big deal when the game first came out, because Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2, you got the Chaos Emeralds through just the story mode, and you didn't have to do any extra work to collect them. So that was kind of nice to see, but at the same time, it wasn't as simple as getting all the Chaos Emeralds and getting to the end of the level. You had to play all of the different teams. You had 4 different teams, all ranging in difficulty, and Team Chaotix even had an entirely different way to complete missions. So, and man, some of the later levels in Sonic Heroes just went on for a very long time. Some people are kind of don't like that there's essentially 3 levels in this game that were the first level in their respective games. Seaside Hill's first level, Escape was the first level, Beating Hill's first level. But honestly, given a lot of people's attention span, yeah, the first level that they play in the game is probably going to be the one they remember most. I wouldn't have minded seeing this be like Grand Metropolis or Egg Fleet. I think Egg Fleet would have been a very cool choice to have in the game aesthetically, but not as many people would remember Egg Fleet as well as they remember Seaside Hill, because Egg Fleet's the second to last level in the game, as opposed to this being the first level in the game that everyone played, you know, so. And it's very iconic, you know, as far as the look of the game. And it's been reused a bunch of times, actually. Sonic and All-Stars Racing and the sequel to that game, Transformed, both had Seaside Hill levels, and then when Sonic Dash first came out, you were basically on Seaside Hill the entire time. They eventually, through updates, kind of like fleshed out a little more. Like if you took a certain route, you'd go to like a pirate ship or something, that things that weren't in the original Seaside Hill. But essentially, Sonic Dash was all Seaside Hill. So it left a pretty lasting impression in that regard for Sonic Heroes.
That piece of junk robot.
Next we have our, tag team mission, which, essentially every clump of side missions has a tag team missions, but this one always stuck out with me because you team up with Rouge, and when you call Rouge, she like shoots these hearts out of her and makes these robots get hearts in their eyes and get all dizzy as if they're all infatuated with her, and then you can attack them because they have these impenetrable shields. Which is really funny to me because Dr. Eggman made an impenetrable shield for his robots, but he made the mistake of giving robots a sex drive that would swoon over Rouge that's, you know, whatever. So, that was, conceptually that's really funny. That, and we've seen Dr. Eggman do that a couple times. Like, in Sonic Colors, there were enemies that you couldn't defeat. Like, they were made out of some sort of material that Sonic just couldn't destroy, but you could still attack them, and they were set up in a way where you can still, like, you know, get to the next part of the level by homing attacking them and all this stuff. So if he had spaced them a little bit differently, then Sonic wouldn't have been able to get through his, you know, trap or whatever. So, you know, sort of the same situation here. Like, this would have been a foolproof plan, but for some reason his robots are susceptible to Rouge's, you know, charm. So, but it's a cartoon, who cares? You know, people try to read too much into that. I was watching some Let's Play of this game, and they were talking about how this is, you know, kind of screwed up. Like, why did Dr. Eggman design them like that? But it's a cartoon, guys. Like, I know it's a lot of people's favorite video game franchise of all time. I'm included in that. But it's a blue hedgehog who wears sneakers and runs fast, so don't read too much into Dr. Eggman's robots having a sex drive, essentially. But anyway, that was that mission. Aside from having to stun the enemies with Rouge, you had to defeat the enemies in order to get to the next section, because when you defeated an enemy, it would make the platforms light up and you can get to the next level. That's how they kind of forced you into actually defeating the enemies and not just running past them, which would be one of the more common ways to get through Sonic levels. You don't want to just defeat every level in a Sonic level. You just get to the end of the level as fast as you can, and that's how it goes. And you know, that basically sums up why Shadow the Hedgehog is really not a very good game, because you would have missions like defeat every enemy in the level. So it was basically a treasure hunt to see if you could find all the enemies. There was nothing fast about that. But you still had the really slippery controls from Sonic Heroes, you know, that would make you go fast. So it was kind of a flop there. When Shadow the Hedgehog, I guess this is the best time as ever to talk about Shadow the Hedgehog the game, because essentially the Chaotix missions in Sonic Heroes kind of set the groundwork for how the levels were going to work in Shadow the Hedgehog. Because in the Chaotix levels, you would have to be like, find 10 hermit crabs to get to end the level, and that's basically how they played at Seaside Hill. They'd have a very similar setup in how to get through Seaside Hill, but as you're going along, you need to be keeping an eye out for hermit crabs, because they're detectives. They find things. That's how they do. There's another one where they have to put out all the torches in Haunted Mansion, or Mystic Mansion, I think is what it's called. So that sort of gameplay made its way into Shadow the Hedgehog. However, Shadow the Hedgehog took it a little bit further. So, I think that the first level is, if you want to do the hero side of Shadow the Hedgehog, you need to defeat all of the alien-type enemies. And if you wanted to be evil, you had to defeat all of the, you know, soldier and man-made robot-type enemies to get to the end of the level. And there was the neutral one where you just go to the end of the level. And that's kind of like where Shadow the Hedgehog kind of got its gimmick, where you can pick which side you want to be on. You want to be a good hedgehog or a bad hedgehog. However, it didn't really work, because if there were, say, 60 enemies in a level, then you had to defeat all 60 of them. If there weren't like 65 where you can afford to miss 5 of them and still complete the level, you had to get every single enemy in the level. And it was still very linear in design, so if you missed a enemy on your way through the very linear level, you would have to go back, because if you reach the end of the level, you can choose to go past the goal ring and kind of loop around the level and go through it again and try to find that enemy. It was very frustrating. And the checkpoints would have, the checkpoints tried to help out a little bit by letting you warp from checkpoint to checkpoint, but the fact that it didn't really have a good way to keep track of where you missed the enemy, there wasn't a radar or anything, it was pretty rough. It was pretty rough to play those levels in Shadow the Hedgehog.
So essentially, when you play Shadow the Hedgehog, most people's initial playthrough is all neutral ground levels, because those are the ones where you just need to get to the end of the level. You don't want to spend too much time looking for certain enemies, because it's a lot easier to just get to the end of the level. And when you play it that way, it's still not the greatest Sonic game. You're still sliding around in a weird way, like in Sonic Heroes and all this type of stuff, and it does really want you to be picking which side you want to be on, but if you do all neutral, you'll get this really weird ending, and you gotta play it multiple times in order to get the true ending, which is kind of weird that if you have a true ending, when the whole gimmick of the game is that you can pick which side you want to be on, good or bad. So it's sort of like Sonic 06, talking about how bad Shadow the Hedgehog is sort of beating a dead horse, just because people know it's bad. I mean, there's really not too much to spend the game on. I thought the gunplay was actually pretty alright. I know people like to hammer the game for the gunplay, but I thought that was one of the things that actually worked better in the game. And when you had to defeat certain enemies that had large health bars, the guns actually worked pretty well for shaving those off, so there's that. That last side mission, you have to do a certain amount of tricks using the ramps and the rainbow rings, and they give you a ton of opportunities to do that, so it's really not too big of an issue to get enough, trick bonuses to get to the end of the level. So that's actually a really easy side mission to do. But now we gotta do red rings, and the red rings in Seaside Hill are pretty fun because I believe I've mentioned this before, but Seaside Hill is a very open level. There's a lot of different ways to get through Seaside Hill, especially the modern one. And just right there, we were actually on top of one of the loop-de-loops that we were going through in the earlier playthrough. I mean, and they even didn't do the shortcut I did during the doppelganger race, where you can skid on top of the water. That was pretty good. I guess you can't defeat these spinner enemies from below, I guess, is something new I found out there. But there's already, probably 4 different ways to get to this very part of the level, which is pretty insane, because we're only, about a minute into the level. And when we hit the checkpoint, I believe we're gonna be probably a minute behind my best time, because the shortcut at the very beginning that I did during the doppelganger race is just so strong. Yeah, see, 57 seconds, close enough. And one thing I want to show off here is that, okay, I take the rainbow rings to get to the upper path, but you can still see the bottom path right there. Well, you can't really just, decide to start going on a different path, unfortunately, because the camera won't start working with Sonic in the same way that it would if you took that path from the start. So Sonic Generations has very few camera issues as long as you are deliberately going down the paths that you want. I don't really see that as a negative point, because the more fluid way to play, the more natural way to play is to stay on the path that you are already on, and if you do that, you'll have almost no problems with camera hardly at all, you know, because it does a pretty good job of knowing when to get closer to Sonic, when to get further away from Sonic. So it's probably the Sonic game I've had the least issues as far as camera goes, because that's always been kind of an issue with 3D Sonic games, is that the camera can't keep up or is too close to Sonic, or one of those issues. The next Red Ring, just take it slowly on the bobsled section. That's what they call this section, the bobsled, because in Sonic Heroes they called it a bobsled. It's more of a cart in this one, but it was a bobsled because it was actually involved teamwork, just like a bobsled in real life. Sonic would be the wheel, Knuckles would be the driver, and Tails would allow it to jump, and every time you got hit while you were in the bobsled, I think you'd lose Sonic first and start going more slowly, then you'd lose Tails and be unable to jump, and then if you lost Knuckles, then you lose a life, essentially. So that's was how it worked in the original game. That's what that's referencing. And if you take the top path and then jump off that railing at the very end, you get that red ring. It's actually one of the more difficult ones to get, just because it's very easy to get the timing wrong when you are trying to stay on top of the level on the top path, just because some of those obstacles actually do have time limits and will go away. So anyway, I believe that is the end of the red rings for Seaside Hill. And next we're going to be going to Crisis City, the infamous Sonic 06 level. So I will see you guys next time.